So, with Arch Manning headlining a super stacked weekend of recruiting in Austin, today I want to focus on four guys that I think are big, not only for the future of the Texas Longhorns, but also for the present and what Steve Sarkisian hopes to accomplish. But before we break this all down, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. And are you excited that in-person recruiting is back in action since Texas has a completely overhauled staff and these guys get to make these first impressions? Let me know what you're thinking there. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification because I do constant college football content and you don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed that content, be sure to like, comment down below. Those interactions are massive to content creators such as myself. But with all that being said, let's kick it off with the big name, 2023 number one quarterback in the nation. And really, if you're a college football fan, probably a household name already at this point, Arch Manning. Now, you're not going to find too many recruits with a better lineage than Arch Manning. This kid right here has got it. He's super talented, super well versed in the game of football, and it is really good for Steve Sarkisian and company to be able to get him on campus this weekend, especially since it's a very loaded weekend of recruiting for the Texas Longhorns. Now, Arch Manning has been on Twitter making headways through his throws we've seen at that last Clemson camp, and traditional wisdom says right now that though this recruiting process is a long way from over, a few institutions are sitting in a really good place, and I'm not going to say that these are the only institutions in a good place, but it's been communicated through multiple outlets. The Clemson Tigers, the Texas Longhorns, and the Alabama Crimson Tide are all in good places, and when you look at the totality of that, it absolutely makes sense. Sark at Texas now has been phenomenal in his capacity with quarterbacks, both working with Tua and with Mac Jones. Clemson has a storied history with the quarterback the last few years, both looking at DJU now, Trevor Lawrence, and then Deshaun Watson, and I understand Alabama hasn't typically been the quarterback U. But let's not make a mistake about it. Since Lane Kiffin got there, he revitalized that offense, and under multiple different offensive coordinators, you've had incredible quarterback success from having the SEC Freshman of the Year in Jalen Hurts under Brian DeBall, then to Tua having a phenomenal season under Mike Locksley, and continuing that with Steve Sarkisian, who had his success with both Tua and then Mac Jones. So all three institutions you really can't go wrong with. But Arch Manning for Texas is huge because Steve Sarkisian just got to put on film a ton of great stuff in his capacity as the offensive coordinator at Alabama and his work with both Tua and Mac Jones. That's going to be a massive selling point to Arch Manning, who is phenomenally talented. And right there, I think could be a marriage. Sark is going to be trying and pushing very hard for the commitment of Arch Manning, especially since Quinn Ewers, who was once a Texas Longhorn commit, is now with the Ohio State Buckeyes and committed to them. And look, make no mistake about it, Sark and them are going to continue communication with Quinn Ewers and trying to get him a part of this class, but you cannot put all your eggs in one basket. And the Steve Sarkisian era is lucky to begin in a time where you could miss on Quinn Ewers and still get a generational talent in Arch Manning. This is a long process, but one we have got to watch. The reason why I wanted to kick it off with Arch Manning because it bleeds into two other prospects I want to talk about of the four. And those two are Cam Dewberry and Reuben Owens, the last guy being Harold Perkins. You know I gotta include a defensive guy on the list. But let's focus on first Reuben Owens and then Cam Dewberry, and I'm just gonna do that because Reuben Owens also a part of that 23 class. Reuben Owens is a incredibly talented running back. We just saw that he had a visit to Alabama. That went very, very well. Alabama is going to be doing everything in their capacity to try and flip him from the University of Texas, but make no mistake, they're not alone. I think Texas has a great benefit of him being an in-state kid, and right now he is doing a phenomenal job in his capacity to try and get Arch a part of this class, which is why I wanted to talk about him. When you have talented guys like this, other people want to play with them because the prospect of having a guy like that on your team is enticing. So Reuben Owens is a very big commit for the Texas Longhorns, somebody they're going to be working very hard to keep a part of this class because, like I said, every institution out there is going to be wanting to get a recruitment piece and pitch in to Reuben Owens. He is that talented. Cam Dewberry is someone who I wanted to bring up when I talked about Reuben Owens because likewise with Arch Manning being there, it makes it more enticing for a guy like Cam Dewberry, who can think to himself, as I gave with the Reuben Owens example, I could be in a situation where I'm playing in a few years with Arch Manning and Reuben Owens, and I'm blocking for them. That is a very enticing pitch, and especially when you look at who the offensive line coach is there now. Kyle Flood had a phenomenal time in recruiting capacities at the University of Alabama, and had a very, very successful time last season actually coaching up that offensive line. Now, granted, that was a very talented offensive line that he took over, but you get the point. I mean, it's not like he had any drop-off, and his recruiting was otherworldly on that offensive line position. So when you compound factors such as Arch Manning is going to be there and Reuben Owens is going to be in his ear, you already know Reuben Owens is going to be in Cam Dewberry's ear. And if there's any indication that Arch Manning is really, really enjoying his time there, it's only going to exemplify that feeling for a Cam Dewberry. Now, he is certainly not the only offensive lineman that Texas needs to be going after. We've talked about Devin Campbell, and Texas seems to be in a good position there. But Texas needs offensive line. And aside from quarterback, that's the most important thing the Texas Longhorns could pull in this class. And Cam Dewberry being a top 300 guy on pretty much, well, any outlet you check, you can't ever argue with guys that talented. And he's an in-state kid. That's a battle that Sark, Jeff Banks, Kyle Flood, the entire staff would love nothing more than to win. But you know I have to finish this out talking about a defensive guy, and none other than five-star Texas linebacker Harold Perkins. Because Harold Perkins we saw on Twitter with that great video of him walking into the hotel room and loving the gummy bears they got him, which was awesome. This kid right here is phenomenally talented, and I understand that he's a five-star, and that goes without saying. But not all five-stars are created equal, and this is an individual who, if you roll the tape of him playing, you could pitch to me that he could play a few different positions within a defense, and I could see it happening. Now, you compound that with PK being there, and we talked yesterday about PK's unbelievable scheme. It makes it all the more enticing. Now, if you want to check out more about PK, go watch Texas Homer's breakdown on that. I'll link that in the description, as well as Fanatic Perspective's breakdown on this recruiting weekend and what Arch Manning means in a larger capacity. I'll link that down below as well. A lot of Texas guys making phenomenal content. But nonetheless, Harold Perkins is incredibly unique because being a five-star guy, every institution in the nation is going to be after him. Now, a crystal ball has been inserted for Texas A&M, but having Harold Perkins at the 40 acres is already big for Steve Sarkisian, no matter where that crystal ball is inserted for. And as Fanatic Perspective said just yesterday, when you're able to get a guy like Steve Sarkisian and Jeff Banks recruiting somebody, you know these guys are top-level recruiters. That bodes well for the Longhorns. And I'm going to add on that, because I don't think it's just going to be them. You're going to have guys such as PK. I mean, the entirety of this defensive staff is going to be selling to Harold Perkins about what they can do for a guy as talented as he. Because if the Texas Longhorns were in a position where they were able to keep Harold Perkins in state, specifically with PK as that defensive coordinator, goodness gracious me, oh my, that right there would be electric, and I would sign me up to watch that. I mean, this kid right here has got a bright future ahead of him regardless, but PK runs such an interesting scheme. I understand it's typically around that outside linebacker position, but PK is a brilliant defensive coordinator regardless, and he's going to put you in the best position to succeed. But when we look at this weekend in its totality, and when we kind of pool all these four guys together, what does it mean? Having Arch Manning here this weekend couldn't have happened at a better time, especially since you get a guy like Harold Perkins in. You compound that when you have 2023 number one running back in his class, Reuben Owens, already committed in this class, who's been in Arch Manning's ear for quite some time. You know how serious he is about trying to get guys committed to this Texas Longhorns class, which bodes well for Texas needing an offensive lineman, and talented offensive lineman Cam Dewberry, also from the state of Texas, just so happens to be on campus this weekend. That right there is the perfect trifecta if you're looking at the offensive side of the ball, but that also bleeds over into the defensive side of the ball, and make no mistake about it. Because if you're a defensive guy, you understand the current status of college football, and the offense is king right now. Sure, you have to have great defense to contain fantastic offense, but offense is where it's at, and Harold Perkins, you can bet, would not argue about playing on a team that has Arch Manning, because I don't think there's a player in the nation situation that's going to argue with playing on a team that could possibly pull Arch Manning. Make no mistake, I'm not saying the battle is over. This battle for Arch Manning is going to go, and it will be a year in the making. We'll still be talking about this next summer, but this is going to be a battle we have to follow closely because Texas is putting themselves in a very unique situation in this one, and getting Arch Manning has incredibly large implications for the future and for recruiting. That's it. See ya.